Hey, how you doing? Good to see you here. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk to you about music. Yeah, music and hate groups and gangs and how they recruit through music. I'm also going to talk to you about the different types of music, all the different genres, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mainstream music and how it has links to racist groups, racist people, racist bands, because there are a few out there. So let's talk about it. Grab yourself a coffee or a popcorn. I've got my coffee as always. And yeah, let's talk about hate music. Where did all this hate music first start? Well, to be fair, there's probably always been different versions of hate music or, racial music. But then it really started to take off in the early 80s. A lot of it came from the skinhead movement. Now, traditional skinheads were not racist, they were not nationalists. In fact, skinhead music, or oi, has its roots in reggae and ska and northern soul. So there are a lot of black skinheads back in the day. But then as it kind of, moved into the 80s, the skinhead music movement really died off. Punk had really taken over. Punk was on the rise massively. And punk was very anti-establishment, it was anarchistic, all these kinds of things. But it had something that these skinheads were really about, and it was aggression. Now, aggression is what really draws a lot of these guys in. Now, especially in the early 80s, there was a lot of really unhappy young men. Britain, especially at the time, was just, the unemployment rate was insane. All the years of Thatcher were just, it was really hard. That's how these movements actually grew. And out of that grew a massive rise in nationalism. In fact, National Front were one of the first groups that started recruiting from skinhead groups. And a lot of these groups realized very early on that these guys are just angry, they hate the world, they hate everyone in it, but then they needed to bring their focus in on certain minority groups, especially in the early 80s, because there was massive unemployment and immigrants were targeted because they were being seen to take all their jobs. And of course, in those early days, punk and all that was really just, it was pretty bad music, but that energy, that aggression is what drew them in. A couple of bands started forming in the early 80s, and one in particular, Skrewdriver. These guys were part of National Front. The lead singer, Ian Stewart Donaldson, he wanted to form a musical movement. He realized that music is what brought everyone together. It was basically like it was the soundtrack to their entire cause. Musically, none of these guys were talented. I couldn't even listen to it. His voice just did my head in. So he formed an organization called Blood and Honor, which was about spreading their message through music. Blood and Honor, spread around the world. It became massive. There's chapters all around the world. One of the first chapters outside of England was actually in Australia, but Blood and Honor has actually been banned in a lot of countries because of all the shit they caused. They started promoting a lot of these bands to get their message out there. Don't know a lot about the early days of the skinhead movement and the music movement. I know that majority of it was oi and punk based. It was always really simple music, really aggressive, very driving. They also were very kind of subliminal with their lyric. You couldn't get away with anything in England at the time, you would get shut down completely. And this is back in the day when you actually had to record and produce tapes and albums and that kind of stuff. All that kind of music was shared at concerts. It was generally sold occasionally through mail order. It was very, very hard to come by back in those days. But then it started spreading to America. Now, America in the early 80s was the same. It was a lot of racial turmoil going on in America. And again, there's a lot of disenfranchised youth who had this aggression. And so a lot of these bands started forming in America as well. Punk and oi and all that had taken off in America at the same time. And so a lot of these racial groups started using that as a way to bring people in. And a few bands formed. One of the earliest ones that I know of was Bound for Glory. Bound for Glory were kind of oi metal based. And the first time I ever heard of them, I opened up a tattoo magazine and there's a half-page ad for their new album. And I was like, That's crazy. Like, wow, you know, at the time I wasn't part of that world at all. And that's nuts that, you know, this overtly racist band can advertise in a tattoo magazine. Tattoo magazine was owned by a biker magazine. A lot of bikers in the early 80s were very racist. In fact, a lot of them actually recruited from the skinhead scene, and they still do today. And again, they all knew that music was a way to bring people in. But again, musically, it was, oh man, they're not an ounce of talent. In fact, they had more here than talent. But then all these other bands started forming. You know, there was Brutal Attack and Chaos 88, and it started really spreading. You know, it helped to really grow the movement, because then they started having events. Ian Stewart Donaldson died, I can't remember the date, don't really care. He died in a car accident. I believe that his brake lines were cut. Well, that was a rumor anyway, but they use that, you know, as a way of really promoting it. The Blood and Honor have memorial concerts every year, and it's an ISD memorial. And that's how a lot of the groups connect with new people, bring them in, show them a good time, listen to some really loud, aggressive music, and yeah, we've got you in. That's how they do it. You know, and as it grew more, a lot of genres started coming out of it as well, especially towards the early 90s. There was a lot of metal influence coming in, and a lot of these groups, you know, kind of went with the times. You know, metal was becoming really popular, so they started forming a lot of metal bands. And even for me, like, I'm a metal kid, didn't gel with oi or punk or anything like that. It just wasn't for me. But metal, that was a different story. So when I first started getting involved with it, you know, this was in the day of LimeWire, you know, and torrenting and all that. It was, you know, file sharing was a bit of a thing. Now, a lot of these groups started using that to share their music, you know, because again, very underground music movement. And the best way to share is through forums, especially back in the day. I downloaded a lot of stuff, and it was always the traditional stuff like Skrewdriver and Bound for Glory, and I thought, oh God, this stuff's just terrible, it's noise. I started finding a lot of bands like National Socialist hardcore bands and hatecore bands. Blue Eyed Devils are the original hatecore band, as they call it. They're more of a hardcore metal style band, you know, and they have very, very hateful lyrics. So hatecore came about. And I originally had hatecore tattooed on my fingers. I turned that into an M, so it's matecore, or sick mate. But that really spoke to me, that kind of music. I was like, yeah, this is what I'm about. I'm more into this. I'm more into that aggressive driving music. And I got into bands like Throwdown and Fear Rains Down and Mosh Pit. The first gig that I organised, this one here, the international guests were actually Fear Rains Down. Two of the members from that band are in Mosh Pit. So a lot of these bands shared members, you know, because there are very few musicians who want to play in these bands. But a lot of these guys start off in the scene and then they become musicians to be a part of that band. I've seen it happen a lot. And I've even seen some of these bands with non-racist members as well. They're just in it because they like to play music. You know, they're never going to be in mainstream bands, but it's their opportunity to play music and play live and all that kind of thing. I have a couple of friends who are members of some really well-known bands who are not racist at all. And so, you know, when it comes to recruiting, there are several different ways that this music does it. You know, firstly, it's through imagery and the name. For a lot of these guys, and it's the majority of their scene are young males. It's always young white males aged between, you know, 16 and 25 who end up getting drawn into this world. As I said, you know, they're really just angry at the world, angry at themselves, and they want to project. Now, when they see that a lot of this imagery and a lot of the band names like Brutal Attack, Bound for Glory, you know, Fortress, Fear Rains Down, all this kind of stuff, like, oh, wow, that's powerful. And they have all this imagery on their albums of, you know, these, you know, staunch white warriors and whatever, you know, they have going on. And it's propaganda. None of it's real. And then the music, it's aggressive and it's driving, and they're like, oh, I can relate to this. This is what it's about. And as they get deeper into it, once they start hearing it a few more times, and it really connects with them, and then they start to understand or read the lyrics, like, oh, wow, oh, they're talking about all the struggles that I have. I can't get a job because of immigrants coming into my country. Oh, you know, this happened because of this and that person. It is designed to really speak to them and what they think is causing all the problems in their own life. The music may not be great, but they're pretty good at getting a message across and connecting and recruiting. So that's why it's become such a powerful tool. You know, and then today, the music has changed a lot. There's a lot of talented musicians in a lot of these bands. You know, and as I talked about before, Mosh Pit. Now, Mosh Pit, you know, they're a really good hardcore band. But they've also downplayed their message, especially because they're from Germany. In Germany, a lot of this type of content is illegal. And if you're singing about overtly racist stuff or any Nazi ideology, that's it, you get thrown in jail. That's no questions asked. So these guys are aware of that. So they spread their message very subliminally. When I first heard them, I went, oh, these guys are great. Oh, there's some hope. You know, because I couldn't stand the rest of only a couple of bands that I liked. And it was generally when they started singing, I went, ugh, no thanks. And when I was going through that scene, you know, I was quite surprised as to what everyone listened to. A lot of these guys, of course, they listen to mainstream music. They wouldn't just sit in their rooms and just listen to this horrible white music. One of the most popular bands in that scene was Pantera. And I'm a huge Pantera fan, have been since Cowboys from Hell. Always loved their music, but for me it was just, I love that music. Still don't even know half the lyrics to their songs. I've heard them a million times. The guys that I was in the scene with, oh man, they love Pantera, you know, it was Southern music. And I'm like, oh, hang on, I see it now. A lot of these guys called it racist redneck rock. And Pantera have come out many times and said they're not racist. When you have the lead singer Phil Anselmo on stage giving a Nazi salute and yelling white power, that's kind of hard to, you know, really dismiss those claims. I really saw it when I saw a collaboration album they did with David Allan Coe. Now, David Allan Coe, back in the day, in the early 80s, produced a couple of albums that were openly racist, openly misogynistic, openly anti-Semitic. Now, David Allan Coe has claimed throughout the years that he is not racist. It was just of the times, you know, he was a member of an outlaw biker gang. And in those days, a lot of them were racist. And there was also another guy called Johnny Rebel who produced anthems for the entire movement. Every event you would go to, you would hear these songs from David Allan Coe and Johnny Rebel play. There was no disguising it. You know, the titles of their songs, everything about it was massively racist, massively derogatory. It was just insane. In fact, those David Allan Coe albums are considered to be some of the most outrageous and controversial albums ever released. So fast forward years later, Pantera did a collaboration with David Allan Coe, Rebel meets Rebel. That's a real hint as to what they're about. It hasn't changed my view on Pantera's music. It's definitely changed my view about their beliefs. They don't announce it, they're not going to put it out there because they are a mainstream band, you know. They're also smart enough to know that if you sing about all this kind of stuff, if you put that out there, you're going to just get slammed, you're going to get cut off, you know, your music won't get released and you'll just get, and there are some bands out there, like even black metal bands like Burzum, who hold these nationalistic and, you know, racist views and are unapologetic about it, but they are mainstream. They don't openly sing about it in their music, but they do have these views. Oh, so there you go. There's a little bit of an insight into how hate groups recruit through music and a little bit of the genres and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to leave it at that for today. I am absolutely melting here down at the beach, and the background music's kind of got me jiving. So if you want to keep supporting the channel, as always, just give us a big like, subscribe, and hit that little bell. But you can also buy merchandise or coffees. You know, if you want to buy me a coffee, all the links are down below as always. And I'll be seeing you on the channel next week from Cambodia. It's a holiday in Cambodia! This is actually my last couple of days here in Thailand, heading to Cambodia on Tuesday. So I'll be seeing you from there. And lastly, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Roscoe from across the ditch in Australia there. Mate, thank you so much for your donation. You know, it means I can get these broken things replaced. It means the world to me, and so do you, and so does your support for the channel. And that goes the same for everyone. Thank you so much for supporting me in every way. It means the world to me, and it allows me to continue to keep sharing this message in the hopes that I can help others. So have a great day, everyone. Go listen to some good music. Shares a message of love, not hate, okay? It's what we need in the world. Peace out, y'all.